Hey guys, welcome back to Veteran Stories Podcast. We are so excited. This week we are going to be talking to Rosemarie Dombrowski about Issued Journal and her revisionary arts program and verse for vets and treks for vets and guitars for vets. So many cool things to talk about this week. I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, guys, so Veteran Stories, we are so excited. We are here with Rosemarie Dombrowski, and she's our guest today. She's the Poet Laureate of Phoenix. She's also a founding director of Revisionary Arts. It's a nonprofit that facilitates self-care and healing through poetry. And she's also the founding editor of Issued, Stories of Service, which is why we're talking to her today. Welcome to the show,
Hey,
Rosemarie.
everybody. Thank you so much, Jack. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. I was really excited when I saw Issued is looking for folks to work on it, and you guys are going to be putting out some really great veteran stories. That's literally what this show is called, Veteran Stories Podcast. So was a total fit for us. Really easy.
Sounds like a perfect fit. I hope you've got listeners that write their stories down that are willing to submit to us. I'm sure we can give them submission information at some point in the show.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely put that up for them on a screen later. Um, but let's dive into it. Let's dive into your background. What
Sure.
brought you to where you're at today?
Well, I think initially I went to school to get a degree in anthropology. I do have a degree in anthropology, but I went
Awesome.
to grad school for literature. And that was really just because I wanted to be a little bit more in the community as opposed to, on archaeological sites or, in removed spaces. I didn't really like working in labs so much, I discovered when I was an
Okay.
undergrad. So I continued my studies in literature. I continued writing about culture and cultural experiences, which was always really important to me. My first year of graduate school, I had a son who was born with some disabilities and later diagnosed with nonverbal autism and a whole host of comorbidities, congenital heart defects, nonverbal autism, a seizure disorder. I could go on and on, but I've been a single mom to him. Wow, my cat just knocked that down. I've been a single mom to him for 25 years now. And so I think, being a caregiver has definitely, defined me and my path to a large extent. And so, it wasn't just about studying literature or studying poetry or being a poet or being a writer. It was about trying to find ways that I could bring some of those tools to community members to help them navigate their lives, their crises, their traumas. Um, and, eventually I kind of remade myself as a medical humanist who specializes in narrative medicine. And my brand of narrative medicine is poetic medicine, obviously, since I'm a
Yeah.
poet. And, I like the form. I like the form because it's concise. It can only hold so much trauma. It can only hold so many emotions. And we know from all of the studies, from all of the books that have been read, that, a lot of us who have experienced trauma and PTSD, myself included, who are diagnosed with PTSD, I should say, we can maybe wallow in that space. We can stay in that space longer than what's healthy for us, kind of reliving those experiences. We get the stuck loop in our brains. And I think what writing has always helped me do is, kind of purge it in the moment. And poetry in particular helps me purge it in small doses in the moment. And so I don't ever feel like I need to relive some of my most traumatic experiences with my son, medical experiences, caregiving experiences. I don't feel like I need to relive those for 3 hours or 3 weeks at a time, and when I do, I get worse. My mental health worsens. So, what I discovered, through this process of kind of remaking myself into a medical humanist was that what's most therapeutic for us are these hour-long sessions in which we, read some poetry that is likely going to resonate with us, we discuss it, and then we write a piece of our own and hopefully are willing to share that. Each step in the process is just as important. as the previous, I think. And when we get to that sharing component, that's when we really start building community, and kind of recognizing each other's humanity and vulnerability. And um, that's how I ended up becoming the director of revisionary arts. That's essentially what we do. And I'm lucky enough to be working with veterans right now.
That's awesome. So it sounds like that's a little bit of structure there. So is that a specific class, or just a program, or how does that?
We Revisionary Arts has partnerships with organizations in the community. And I personally have partnerships with entities at ASU like OVMAE, which is how you found me, the Office of Veteran Academic Affairs and Engagement. Um, they brought me in about a year and a half ago to start facilitating what we call Verse for Vets. And I facilitate at least one poetic workshop. I call it, a poetic medicine workshop. I facilitate at least one per semester for veterans at ASU, but we just talked about upticking that to two, which I would love. And I did a 4-week stint with women veterans at the Vet Center in Phoenix this semester. So I like to go where I'm needed. I've worked with incarcerated folks, both male and female. I'm currently working with dementia patients as well. So, and other people who work for the nonprofit, work with other populations. But I think I think as facilitators of poetic medicine, we go where we feel most comfortable. We work with the populations that we feel like are kind of our people, if
Sure.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like, trauma is a universal language. Yeah, it is.
Yep.
So I've never really felt uncomfortable in any of those spaces. I don't pretend to understand anybody's trauma or anybody's individual experience, but I know that I've been through the shit too. So I feel like, there's kind of a universal language that we all speak. And yeah, it's been the most amazing leg of my journey thus far.
That's so cool. Well,
Thank
I
you.
know that you've got veterans that run in your family, right? Is that correct?
I do. I do. Yep. I'm the daughter of, if you can believe it, I was his last child, a Korean War vet, if you can believe. So my dad was a Korean War vet.
Okay.
Um, my half brother, his son, was also a veteran of the Marines. Both of them are Marines. My brother is still alive. My dad is not. And then one of my mom's sons is a veteran of the Air Force. So I have another brother who's a veteran of the Air Force and of the Vietnam War.
So
So,
lots of family in
yeah.
the military. That's great.
Absolutely. Grew up around all the medals and the flags displayed everywhere. And my mom saying, "Why does this have to be right here?
Because
Can't
it
this be
does.
somewhere else?"
That's awesome. So, what do you know about how Issued got started?
Well, I have loved literary journals and publications forever, it seems. Um, I'm a university person, but I'm a community girl at heart, and I've been running journals, literary journals in the community for a really long time, probably 20-ish years. And I had been running a community facing journal at ASU for 16 years. It was called Right on Downtown, and we focused on Phoenix creatives. Like, what are Phoenix creatives doing? What are the poets writing? Let's publish it. What are the other artists, tattoo artists and muralists and musicians? What are they doing? Let's interview them. Let's find out. So it was this kind of cool, like community centric publication that we used to launch in the community. Great vibe, a lot of fun. But, after a 16-year run, I was open. I was open and interested in doing something else, and OVMAE approached me and asked me if I'd be willing to theme an issue for veterans. And I said, "How about we do one better? How about you just let me build a new journal from the ground up for veteran stories?" I mean, that really appealed to me, being the daughter and the sister of veterans and never having created a space specifically for veterans, never having worked specifically with veteran populations.
Yeah.
I was over the moon about that. So they said, "Okay." They said, "Yeah, go forth. Let's see what you can do." And so I felt like the bar was pretty high. I was a
Sure.
I was a little nervous, but I'd also had an awesome creative writing student a couple years prior at ASU, a couple semesters prior, who was a veteran of the Air Force. And I thought, man, I wonder if that student ever moved out to Arizona like they had planned. And I wonder if they're available to work on this journal with me. So I emailed them and they were here. They had just arrived. And I said, have I got a project for us? And so, they were immediately on board. They were with me all last year, helping me build the journal. And they've been my student worker for the last several months, and they're going to be helping me on the next issue as well. There's some undergrads who participate as editors who don't have a military background and don't come from military families, but they all have a story. Like, but I had this teacher in high school, or, my dad's best friend. I feel like everybody knows a veteran. Everybody loves a veteran. Like, everybody has at least one veteran that's impacted their lives. And so, the kids who come in without, thinking of themselves as military affiliated, I think they leave the experience feeling very different. And isn't that kind of what it's about? It's kind of about like all of us being able to see military affiliated peoples and veterans and hear their stories as human stories.
Yeah.
That's what it's about. So I love working with the undergrads. I've also got a woman coming in from the community who's going to join the editorial board this year. She's been working with some other veterans organizations and journals. She's a veteran herself. So, she caught wind of the project, and OVMAE, Stacy at OVMAE introduced me to her as well. And so she's coming on as an editor. And
Awesome.
those connections are really exciting for me. I love creating platforms. That's kind of my jam, and I guess that was sort of the point of this question. I love creating literary journals, anthologies. I love curating them because that's where the voices live. That's where
Sure.
the stories live. That's where our humanity lives. I frankly don't always love, like, reading a poetry collection by one person. It's fine if you go in knowing you love that person's voice, you love their
Right.
content, you love their theme. I think it's always more enriching for readers and for the editors and for the writers who participate to be part of something. So I like creating those platforms and creating those communities because you get to see then what that does for people.
So cool. Yeah, I know definitely like having a little bit of variety in your readership, that's going to be good because like or in the, the authorship, right? Because if you're just reading the
Mhm.
same thing, unless you really love it, unless you intentionally went and picked
Exactly.
up that one book by that one
Exactly.
author, somebody will
Exactly.
reach out and grab you. Yeah.
This is what I always tell young poets. Like, you need to consider the fact that your $20 collection of poetry is probably only going to be purchased by your family and friends because nobody really knows who you are. Nobody's going to spend that kind of money on a collection of poetry of all things by somebody that they don't know. But people are going to pick up Issued because, first of all, it has an amazing cover. I can show you this year's cover. It's fantastic. It has an amazing cover. And you already know as soon as you open the first page that it's a multitude of voices. It's men, it's women, it's gender nonconforming individuals, it's intergenerational, it's Vietnam vets, it's Iraq vets, it's Afghanistan vets, it's students, it's non-students. I mean, that just excites people. Everybody thinks they're going to find something for themselves in there, and they will. And I think that's how you get readers.
Yeah. Do you have any authors who've written in well, first off, how many issues of Issued have there been? How many
Just
runs?
launched. We
Just one?
launched in May 2023.
All
Yeah, we
right.
launched in May
Awesome.
2023.
Okay. So from that, is there like any author that you want to call out that's just like you found particularly inspiring or think that a lot of veterans would be really kind of like affiliated with? They can like, oh yeah, that I totally get that story. Is there anybody you want to call out?
And you already heard me call some of them out before this interview started. There's a couple of Vietnam vets in there whose pieces I love. I don't know if they're going to resonate, as much with younger veterans because younger veterans haven't experienced the draft. But I think that's a really cool perspective for us to kind of sit with how different that is when you're drafted into the military versus,
Yeah,
you sort of volunteering to serve. So I love Christopher Elliott's piece, which is called Days in the Draft. Love that. So, he's a Vietnam vet, but I've got a lot of favorite poets in the journal because I reached out to a lot of veteran poets around the country whose work I was interested in.
sure. And you're the
Um,
editor, so you get that patriotic
exactly.
choice. They're all
And I
your
was
favorite.
dangling the carrot of, I know you guys want to be part of this new journal that is military focused.
Sure.
So I guess, the biggest catch we got was Brian Turner. And I have to give a shout out to him because as a student of literature, as a lover of poetry, as a poetry scholar, have loved his work for years. Um, I just recently started teaching courses on war poetry, which we actually call the poetry of witness. It's about witnessing conflict.
Okay.
Um, so I do consider myself sort of a light scholar in that realm. And, Brian Turner's work is work that, I always teach in that class. And it was work that I was, teaching in other classes. I was making sure that it was working its way into other classes. He's an Iraq War veteran and an extremely accomplished poet. I mean, he's essentially a professional author. His 2 collections, Here Bullet and Phantom Noise, are extraordinary. I mean,
Yeah.
I think he's kind of the voice of what I would call, the poetry of witness and conflict for the 21st century. But then there's also Hugh Martin, who's an ASU alum. He did his MFA in poetry at ASU after he came out of the military, and his poetry is included. He's an extraordinary poet, and he's been really generous with his time. He's done a lot of readings with us since the launch of the journal. And there's one other poet, Catherine Clark Sales, who was an army physician, and obviously her med school was paid by the army, and
Right. Right.
so she had a lot of years of service in there behind her. She was out in the San Francisco area and abroad. And I love medical poetry because I'm a special needs mom. So I've been writing, sort of the poetry of disability and what I call medical poetry for years. So her
Yeah.
poetry really resonates with me because it is both about her medical experiences and her military experiences.
Sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, all 3 of them are extraordinary, but, every piece in the journal has, immense value. Everybody's telling a different story through a different lens. And so, I think to say that, it's only one is unfair. I love them all. But yeah, I've a
Absolutely.
proclivity for poets.
No worries. No worries. And obviously, super, super hard to pick just one at anything,
It
right?
is. I know. And I didn't pick just one. I still talked about all 3.
Absolutely. Good job. So one of our silly questions that we ask when we have veterans on is, "What was your favorite MRE?" Have you ever had one?
Oh man, I'm such a vegetarian. And I have been since I was 20. Oh, I know what they are. I mean, my college boyfriend was a veteran, so I've always known what MREs are. They're terrifying to me. I mean, it's it seems like it's 10 times worse than like a Go-Gurt. And I'm imagining that it would be. And I know they don't all, squeeze into your mouths. And
Ah,
I've also my son's father, who, I'm not particularly close to, but he's a veteran. And I know that he still had some MREs back in the day when we were in our 20s. And, he joked about opening it up and it tasting as good as Spam. So, yeah, I've heard lots of stories. What's your favorite MRE? That's what I wanna know. Is it the
my
spaghetti? I've heard the spaghetti's okay.
vegetarian lasagna was the one that I
Ooh,
would go for. It just seemed like they had ruined it the least. I think if you had low expectations going into it, you didn't get as disappointed. There was also the tuna, and the tuna was just literally tuna fish, and then it
that
came with
sounds good.
candy. And so you would get the tuna because then you could trade the candy for other things that tasted better. But
Not bad, honestly. I used to do a lot of hiking in the Grand Canyon, and so you had to succumb to bringing tuna with you, right? was like
Yeah.
tuna, peanut butter, some power bars, some
Yeah.
bagels.
My trick
Yeah.
was always to get they had these giant brown not self-serve, but individual servings of peanut butter, and that would be what I would take whenever we were out rucking, because you need some energy,
Yeah,
and that's a real easy way to get it. You just pop it in. I
absolutely.
still pack it in my ruck these days anytime
That's
I go out.
awesome. That's awesome. I mean, you can buy those in the grocery store, right? You can buy the peanut
Yeah,
butter and the
yeah,
almond butter ones. Yeah, absolutely.
absolutely. I
I'm
buy
impressed that they had vegetable lasagna. Can I just say that? I'm really
well,
I would have definitely traded anything for that one.
if you've ever seen the meat patty one, the meat patty is
Mm,
basically like wet cardboard. I mean,
mm-mm,
it's disgusting. It's
mm-mm, there's no
absolutely
way.
disgusting. Yeah,
That
there's
would those
something
would be the
about it.
days I would starve for sure.
Yeah, there's something about it. I went into boot camp at 190 and I came out 165. So that says how good the food
Oh,
was. It
oh
wasn't
my
very
God.
good.
What are they gonna do with somebody like me? If I go in at 125, what am I
I don't know.
That's pretty
They're gonna
scary.
have you on fluids and glucose, but
They
yeah,
better have me
no.
on peanut butter packets every day. That's all
Yeah,
I'll eat. Oh,
absolutely.
man. That's
Um,
hilarious.
so then another one of our questions that we like to ask is, do you have a favorite veteran, like a historical veteran? Is there any veterans
Oh,
that
yes.
inspire you?
Historical veteran. God, oh, this seems like a contentious
And you can pick something really
I
simple,
mean,
like, George
what
Washington or
you know what? I'm actually gonna go with John McCain because I do consider myself an Arizonan. I moved here when I was 14, and I had so much respect for him and the way in which he valued service. I mean, he wore it on his sleeve. He incorporated that part of his life and his regard for other veterans and service members into everything that he did. And I found it shameful that he was berated and belittled by other politicians after his death. Because I
yeah.
think most Arizonans can admit that he was a pretty beloved figure here. And ASU, I'm sure you might know this already, is the home of the future John McCain Library. So,
Yeah, no, I much respect for John McCain. I've met him twice in my life. Once
really, that's
when I
amazing.
was 15, and then once when I was actually working at ASU. He came and spoke,
Oh,
and I got to speak to him.
that's
Lot of respect
fantastic.
for that guy. Really crazy POW stories, and one time his aircraft, when it was not one he was piloting, because he was a pilot, but he was riding in an aircraft and landed on an aircraft carrier. And I don't know if you've heard this story, but when he landed, the tires, not the tires, the brakes got so hot that they caught on fire. And the material that the brakes are made out of are so hot that they ditch the aircraft rather than let it burn through the ship, right? And so somebody scooped up John McCain just physically and tossed him off the aircraft. And that's just like one crazy instance of an
Wow.
experience with John McCain, but so much respect for him. Like, it doesn't matter
Wow.
which political party you're a part
No,
of. Like,
no,
he was a solid guy,
he
and a
was.
really great veteran with a crazy story, and much
He
respect.
was.
So great
He
choice.
was. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was gonna stick with Arizonans no matter what. Ruben Gallego would have been second.
There you go. There you go.
And see, that's 2 different parties. That's 2 different parties. I mean, I like politicians who stand by their communities. I don't think there's any other kind of politician to like. I mean, they're not that likable to begin with. And if they're not gonna represent their people, I mean, obviously, they're supposed to represent their constituents, which they don't do a great job of doing. But I do think that some of our veteran politicians have been fantastic advocates for veterans issues, for VA benefits, for mental
Absolutely.
health. And, you rarely hear any other politicians speak on those issues.
Yeah.
So we
Yep.
need them in office.
We always appreciate it when we get somebody in office. I think it's hard as a veteran to even want to go be there, because there seems to be this feeling among veterans, I think, that when we're serving that we dislike what they're doing, what politicians are doing, right? And, we work and we are directly impacted by politicians as service members. So, like, sometimes we take things personally because they are.
Right.
But,
Right.
I'm always respecting veterans when they get out and they go into politics because I generically speaking, not any specific politicians, I just don't generally like them. I don't like them
Right.
at all.
I
Not very
know. They're
much.
they're not really trustworthy.
And it's not, it's
They're
not
not.
a party thing. It's just literally
Right.
politics are politics, and I don't have
Right.
a lot of time for them.
It's a
So,
certain personality type for sure that goes into politics, and I don't know that John McCain had that personality type. He didn't present like he did.
no, he
I
presented
think
like
he
he was
did.
getting things done.
Yeah, he stood out from the pack, so
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, awesome. So Issued, that's a really great resource and project that's really breaking strides here. What other things that you excited about? Any other organizations that you're working with?
well, it's not so much an organization, but, Issued is hoping to do a different kind of launch in 2024. And I think it's important to showcase the fact that we're not just a literary magazine, we're a magazine that profiles also, in addition to publishing poetry and short fiction and short nonfiction. We profile veterans who are maybe not writers, but are doing extraordinary work in the arts, mental health, nonprofit sectors, education. And so that kind of gives us an opportunity to do something different at our launch. And so that's the plan for 2024. We want to have a little bit more of a panel discussion, potentially with veterans who are working in alternative modalities of mental health, art therapy, nature therapy. I know you're a Trek for Vets veteran, so I
Oh
want to hear
yeah,
about this. I'm a big proponent of art therapy, nature therapy, narrative medicine, poetic medicine, all of these things. And so I'd like to get people who kind of represent these different, alternative modalities to speak for about 10 minutes each. People that we've profiled, they're going to be featured in the
sure.
issue, but I'd like to hear them speak about their work for about 10 minutes each. And then I want to intersperse some of the poets that are featured in the issue in between. And maybe the effect that we're going for with this is so that people don't just hear these veterans who work in these alternative mental health spaces like given lip service to these things, but they can also then kind of experience some of the benefits and the products that come out of these alternative therapies via the readings. So I want to do a little bit of critical, a little bit of creative, get those things dialoguing this year because I
Sure.
think that makes the poetry more meaningful for somebody who picks up the journal later.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I was a participant in Treks for Vets, which is a great program. I'll go ahead and just give them a plug. Treks for
yeah.
Vets is an awesome program put on by ASU, but I think it also started from another organization in
It did. It started in
Colorado.
Colorado. It started in Colorado. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So awesome program, but basically you go out to nature and you get in touch. There's a little bit of literature that you read, there's some physical activities, you do a lot of hiking, and you're just out in nature and getting away from the city and all of these things. And it's really kind of funny for me because I've always known that nature was my escape. So like since so I had a traumatic event happen in my life in 2014, and since then I've had to find ways to make it through life basically, just to keep going. And I used nature as that thing, right? So I started this whole program. I do Some other people may know me for my overlanding channel that I do, but now I'm working a lot with this veteran program. But overlanding was me getting out into nature because I needed that nature experience. I needed that nature exposure. And I like doing it in a truck because, that's fun and I can bring all my stuff with me. have all my creature comforts of home, but be out
Love
in
it.
nature and do it for as long as I need to, as long as I want to, right? That's the beauty of it. You're
Awesome.
self-supported, so you get out there and then you're just doing stuff. But Treks with Vets was cool because when I did it, it pulled me out of my safe space of having my vehicle with me,
Mm.
and I just had what was in my backpack. And what was in my backpack
Mhm.
wasn't always what I needed. So, you know, it did push a little bit of the push things around a little bit in me and make
Mm.
me, open up and try to just figure out how to be. But really great experience. If you can get in on it, check it out. Treks for Vets. It's awesome. So,
It is awesome. Yeah, I know a lot of the people who work within Trucks for Vets at ASU, and it is a fantastic program. And, I think it's a good thing for us to be pushed just a little bit out of our comfort zone if we're willing, because there's usually something kind of surprising there on the other side.
yeah.
So, and what's the
Yep.
org that you're working with now?
So now I'm doing a Veteran Stories podcast. That's what this is. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Is that what you meant? Or
No, your nature therapy that you mentioned. You doing that on your own, or is that with an
I've been
organization?
doing that on my own. I've been doing that on my own for almost 10 years. And that's
That's
just
fantastic.
me. And
That's
that's
just
my
you.
therapy.
It's just you
That's
and your
my
truck.
therapy. Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
I go out and
fantastic.
I just go be out. My wife comes out with me sometimes and we go do trips. And then sometimes I'll meet up with friends. That's some of the content you'll see on my other channel, the Overland channel. Check it out. It's
That's
fun.
great.
But
That's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome. It's so
Yeah.
important for people to have, I think, veterans especially, to have all these options presented to them. And I'm not sure where that happens. I'm not sure where in the reentry process that happens. I think it doesn't happen in an official capacity. I think, like in other situations in life, you just kind of left to figure it out. You're left to navigate it on your own. And
Yeah.
so, I've really enjoyed plugging in with people like Brian Turner and, Beth, whose last name I can't remember, who's, the local veteran who's gonna be working on Issued with us in 2024. I've really loved spending time with them because they are the veterans, at least the 2 of them out of all the veterans I know, who make it a point to make lists of resources,
Mm,
and they're both kind of focused on literary resources, but I gotta tell you, the lists of literary resources they've provided me with are vast.
yeah.
And, when you're working on something like what I'm working on at ASU, you're kind of in a vacuum. You can reach out to other universities blindly. It's rare that anybody gets back to you. It's rare
Yeah.
that you really ever get a read on what any other veteran center around the country is doing. So it really comes down to like a couple of veterans being invested enough to compile these lists and then distribute them as widely as possible. And I feel like that's about as much as we can hope for. That's
Yeah,
all we
yeah,
need.
and the more I'm digging into it, that's kind of what I'm seeing happen here, right? So we go around and we talk to people to find out what they're doing so we can make those resources known for our
This becomes
veterans.
a list.
This
Yes,
is our
yes, that's
list.
amazing. I
This is
love
our
it.
outreach. Because like I'm looking through and as I build our community, I'm seeing all these people doing really amazing things like horses for vets, guitars
Yeah.
for vets,
Yeah, the
all
guitars for vets at ASU too, yes.
such a cool program, and that's a
Yes.
national program. That's not just ASU, that's a national
Oh,
nationwide program,
wow.
and they're doing awesome stuff, getting instruments out. We're gonna be talking to one of the guys local here for Instruments for Vets soon. That's an upcoming episode where we get to talk to them
Yeah,
about music therapy, right?
that's
And music
great, yeah.
therapy is very similar to writing, right? Like, getting
Yeah,
out your stuff. That's what's so
absolutely.
important. So, super
It
cool.
is. I mean, who knew there were that many things for vets? You just don't know because oftentimes these programs do, in their nascency, only exist at one university or one veteran center,
Yeah.
and they're not even on the website. I mean, Verse
Yep.
for Vets has like a tab on the website, but it's not that easy to find. And the
Sure.
Vet Center in Phoenix just recently reached out to ASU to see if there was anybody who was willing, to facilitate some writing workshops for veterans. So, of course, I was the first person volunteer for that. So that's the part that's frustrating to me is the things called veteran centers or VA hospitals where all of
Right.
those resources you would think would be curated and disseminated to the veteran population, that's where it's not happening. And so it
Yeah.
seems like, it's all these individuals, all these nonprofits, like all these cool projects. It's obviously up to this network to put those lists together and disseminate them.
Yeah.
It's
And
a
I
lot of
I think
work, but
but I think there's people who are willing to do it, and we've got our
absolutely.
work cut out for us, right? But there's a lot of folks who wanna just help other veterans, and,
Yep.
I I was at one point a person who had to depend upon other people in order to just make it through life, and, there's something that you can do, right? Like, I guess that's my
Yeah.
message if you're a veteran and you're watching and, like, you're stuck in whatever moment you're in, like, just keep going and, reach out, look for a buddy, look for a friend, right? We're going to put resources at the end of the video for, if you need to talk to somebody, but there's something that you can do. You can make it through. Don't become a statistic, don't become a number, right? We can do it. So, well, on that note,
What a
I'm going to
fantastic
end this
message, Jack.
before I start crying cuz oh no, I don't need to do that.
A
Um,
fantastic message.
but yeah, we love it.
Human suffering, man. I was just talking about that earlier today, and some of us just get the pings. We get the pings more than others.
Yeah,
And there are resources for us. There are communities that we can
definitely.
plug into, that can help us maintain and even help us heal.
Yep,
So,
absolutely. Well, I want to thank our guest today, Rosemarie Dombrowski, or RD, as she likes to be called. Thank you so much for coming on. We're gonna
thank
create
you.
some. What are some places people can find Issued? Where are you guys at? Like
We're on the web.
Instagram,
I mean,
ASU.
we're on the web at issuedjournal.com. So you can read all of our content from this year's issue on the web. And you can also find submission information there. So that's issuedjournal.com. You can submit your writing. That could be poetry, that could be prose, pretty short stuff, really, is all we're publishing now. And you can also nominate a profile subject. So that's anybody that's not a writer, that maybe isn't writing their own story, but that's doing extraordinary work within veteran communities. We would love to talk to them. We will make their story known because we will get somebody to interview them and then we will publish that interview along with some photos. So all that information is at issuedjournal.com. You can also go to ASU's Office of Veteran Affairs and OVMAE. Yep, it's really difficult to remember what that acronym stands for, but if you go to OVMAE at ASU, you can find Verse for Vets, Guitars for Vets, Trek for Vets. I think those are the three programs that we sponsor there. And then if all else fails, you can go to revisionaryarts.org because we offer free, open to the entire community poetic medicine workshops every month. So you can always join us. There are veterans and non-veterans commingling there every month, being vulnerable together, reading poetry, talking about how it makes them feel, writing a little bit themselves, and then sometimes sharing it. So um, we would love to see some new people join us for those workshops in the future, especially some veterans.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, RD. We're gonna go ahead and sign off now,
Thank
folks.
you.
Make sure to stay tuned for anything that's coming up. We've got a bunch of different guests that we're excited to share with you. So those will be coming up soon. But thanks so much. Take care.
Hey guys, if you're in crisis and you're struggling, you need somebody to talk to, make sure to call the Veterans Crisis Line. It's 988 and then press option 1. They've got folks there to talk to you and help you out. You're not alone. Don't suffer in silence. Thanks for watching. Take care.